The Gold County Paper Mill presents. Clifton was an oath of fencing sworn out over boondocks, hot and gas and coffee, as bland bands of branded landscape clapping pangs of change into all the moldering homes of the feeder road of no phones of the late shift, swollen and bent under the pressures of a huge expanse of stubborn southern night, where Mrs. Wheeler is having a conversation with a convincing jumble of interstate, saying something about leaving town. Her children clang like a few angry spoons arguing in the sink. The whole house is obnoxious. The Archers are at home listening to the buffalo. Chad's watching owls sing, vinyl siding into the trees and teaching their love songs to a tape recorder, expecting their guitars to fly. Everyone is interrupted. And our mothers sit directly across from one another in a kitchen neither has ever cooked in. They discuss nothing as intensely as the aluminum siding pamphlets asleep in dust on the coffee table, now covered in stains from these heated conversations. I never went to school. The room argues with itself. Sophie's and Thomas's play in their pajamas to music none of their three grandfathers approve of. The sun burns the lawn. For sale signs grow from the brown patches of dead grass. The highway tangles its smoky limbs around outside our town, protecting us forever from it. Everyone forgets, no one goes to church, and our heritage sits on a bench in South Texas, continuously misspelling your name. 'Cause Mary Lou is dead, and so, at night, Mr. Cardini dreams of an angel-headed owl monster of hammers falling on the Atlantic mountains like steel exploding in the bellies of trees. Like a twine of asphalt reshaping every September evening if only to scare the women. Like a huge hovering nothing manipulated by the timeless and exhausted, now haunted with bourbon, if only to make it louder, if only to make more money. And it pushes everything upside down out of gutters into mine straight to work to look out for the burbs where no one is thirsty, or pushes the moon out of place with hammers deep into dreams about mountains sitting misshapen in a September evening. The Wheelers wake him up. The Archers get him a glass of water, and their children stand around his bed, contemplating a life without choices. Noberto comes in from the garage and begins to explain. You see, Mr. Cardini can't sleep. Says his father brought him a ghost of hands spoken out over the answering machine, and it plays all night. That's why there's paper all over the floor. He picks up a page and begins to read. Imagine our home, Guadalupe. Before its walls and children sink into the hilly talk of our frustration. A gamble of your lightning, bright as lousy dimes spent all over Carolina. A hushed America falling on the riverbank like killer machinery coming across the water for Plano and Moyock, in whom I sit lonely. A sea of women emptying into your bay, leaving the shore choked in dresses. A drunk flood of prairie maids pouring more milk, cream, and alcohol, saying your name like suburbia is too loud and expensive, says he misses you like all the other tender creatures of no pitch or trouble in the dew, says all these tones have stepped out of his radio, pressing you against the hills in sleep to make the dark, and it's gorgeous, like the high rolling ranges of bucolic tongues born broken in your mouth as twang, as Wheeler, as Price, as Stanley, as Fields, as Labrador, as Hipshire, as Cardini, as all the old boys of Tokay and Fingers, as all the poor beat forms way back beyond the ridge and the sticks, as all the sour silhouettes of whiskey made of nothing imaginable, rolling in big as waves from space, heard washing up in dreams as surf music, as a long history of working hands doing so many things in the stern suburban night of grandfather and ten eyes and doppelgangers, threading the air with the umbilical debris of coal and people and thinking it landscape, sending them everywhere as that bitter churn of road and wire that has kept them alert on your move from Appalachia, where your mother moved in with a Navy man, where your daughter sits at home, holy-legged in her dreams of your pride, where someone has no bed and so sleeps in the records as the 2 new moons of your cats, the age of your house, the hidden devouring eyes of your lover, and the old Negro churches of your young Christ mind that still dance your hallways when you're at work or prayer, resting in the heart of Ohio, where you still have no father, but in sorrow, abandoned, and letters have named new children out of your hips, wedlock and lightning heard breaking through the trees, as all us lonesome travelers, mapping out a book, crossing over pages, falling out of windows, sailing through the hills, and calling it wind, and calling it her. In contrast, sinks a calm town of sidewalks deep into a pink ridge of chemicals. In their valley, a huge thing, jagged and as encompassing in vision as sleep, rolls into the plains, plotting out the tributaries of highway, caught cascading into southern pools of fields, as a yawn of sprawl out across the undergrowth and calling it nowhere. A dream of snakes, large as thoughts, billowing over the heads of the ugly children of a plastic forest. A lull of joy and madness sighed just below space by a southern hush of trees, tall in humid stupor. A noise of suburbs hiding in their basements from music. And all the friends are trapped in the city limits. Full bodies of appetite tangled in a static web of power lines, transmitting the whole drama of night and mistakenly calling it life and calling it gale. An Atlantic hymn of maiden names defining the sky as overwhelming and intrusive. A chorus of crystals, a Matthews, a gasp, and a stellar operetta performed in a heart. An element of understanding blown unheard in the lungs of Colburn, coughing for her sons, afraid of their hands, and calling it hereditary, something like inevitable, kind of like the wind, as depicted by the searchers, lost in the caverns, looking for the interstate and getting out of town. Following dad like shame over the mountains and onto the beach, where they'll rest to write a book about nothing for them called you. A black tome thrown against a tree causing a hurricane. A summer of eclipses producing the anticipated sounds of the future. A jack, confuflux in shape and as irrelevant to planets as love. And I'm calling it a space opera.